This is Feshpints of Blair. I didn't mispronounce the title. It's probably my favorite YouTube video of all time, and I also think it's one of the best pieces of art ever put on the internet. It's a 20-minute video made by an anonymous user that we only know as Krobo Productions. And the whole premise of Feshpints is taking clips of the Will Smith show, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and editing them into a completely different video. It feels a bit like watching a regular episode of Fresh Prince but with a gas leak.
How you doing, baby?
I just feel so guilty, Aunt Viv.
I don't care.
I know, Aunt Viv.
But why am I talking about this silly 12-year-old YouTube video today? And it's a pretty simple answer, because nobody else has. If you've seen Feshpints, you might think I'm being ridiculous, because it isn't exactly a complex piece of work. I mean, it's no berserk, I'm just saying. Feshpints is clearly made by someone who's really good at video editing and storytelling, but it doesn't really get much deeper than the fact it's just trying to make you laugh. It's funny to hear Will Smith's dialogue cut together so it sounds like he's saying brarb.
I can have a leg in one hand and a brarb in the other.
You can probably tell, but I love this video. But as I found out sharing it with others, there are some people who will definitely never find this funny. And you know what? That's okay. No amount of analysis from me or anyone else is gonna change that. But it is absolutely worth trying to understand it at least, because it's not just me who loves it. Feshpints has its own fan base. It has 3.7 million views. And Feshpints later on got a sequel in 2014 that also has 2.4 million views. As of writing this literally right now, a part 3 just got uploaded, over almost a decade later. Will Smith's own YouTube channel doesn't get views like this these days. His Chris Rock slap apology video really didn't do that much better than Feshpints did. That's kinda sad. People will randomly quote Feshpints on the internet, they'll cosplay it, even draw fan art. Supposedly, somebody even got married because of this video. It's like the Citizen Kane of internet videos, if Citizen Kane was good. You can go to the comments of Feshpints year round, and there will always be a new person leaving a comment about how much they love the video. And then you click on their username and they turn out to be some guy who makes Roblox videos with like 19 million subs. Cool. When something resonates with this many people, on this much of a level, it means there's something in Feshpints that's worth analyzing, and I'm gonna find it, no matter how long it takes. But before that, we need to back up a bit and discuss exactly what type of video is Feshpints. It's a YTP. What's a YTP? It stands for YouTube Poop. It's a mashup style of video that essentially takes existing videos and through different types of video editing produces a completely brand new video out of them. You can chop up someone's dialogue, take sounds, and then make them say something else. It's a lot more cooler than AI editing because you actually have to do stuff. Here's the original version of a line.
For your information, I have a date.
And now here's the version by two YTPers, Jimmy Davis and Master Josh.
For your information, I have information.
It's usually a you'll know it when you see it type of thing. If these videos ever had a purpose, it was basically to do anything that'll make the viewer laugh. But to go back to basics, what people agree today as the first ever YTP was a video remixing that old animated Mario TV show, and it was titled The Adventures of Super Mario 3 Remixed. It takes the old 90s Super Mario animated show, cuts scenes from it, and puts them back together in a different order. And that's basically all there is to it. The uploader was a guy called Super Yoshi. And for the record, Super Yoshi was only 15 when he made that. Now it's a whole genre. It was hosted on a website called Shiziot and was uploaded originally as an Adobe Flash file. According to Super Yoshi themselves, it took nearly 2 hours to upload this 1.6 megabyte file. Eventually the videos moved off of Shiziot to this brand new video sharing platform called YouTube? And that's when the YT part got attached to the name. And if you watch Super Yoshi's video today, it's not great, but what Super Yoshi's video did extremely well was change the relationship the viewer had with the Mario cartoon. We think of it as a whole, a single episode of a TV show. The purpose is to enjoy the story of the episode. But you can't watch Super Yoshi's video in this way. Instead, it's a clinical digital piece of work, something composed of frames and a single authorial voice. It's impossible to follow it as a linear story. Every cut is super jarring and pulls you out of it. It all reminds you that you're watching someone else's version of the original source material. There are now, in all likelihood, hundreds of thousands of YTPs on YouTube, mainly because the barrier to entry is so low. All you need is video editing software. Back in 2009 and 10, these videos had a big following, with the most popular YTP creators having around 30,000 subscribers. I know in the era of Mr. Beast, this might not seem like a lot of people, but it was. It still is. Do you remember Fred? This guy was the most subscribed channel at one point with like 600,000 subs. When people say, oh, I missed the golden age of YouTube, they're talking about Fred. One influential YTPer back in the day was a guy called Waldfield. In 2021, he published an autobiography where he looks back on his career in YTP. I know. And in the book, when discussing Super Yoshi's video, he makes an interesting point. In the early 2000s, computers used to ship with video editing software already installed on them, and at the time, you couldn't really do anything on them besides mess around with existing videos. Like, what else was I gonna do? Make a movie in Windows Movie Maker? Every child with a computer was doing it, and I bet they still do it, just on iPads and stuff. Some directors have used similar styles of filmmaking before. I'm not saying they were doing the exact same thing, but a lot of the same philosophy is there. Nobuhiko Obayashi's films are often disorienting in the same way, with tons of use of effects like double exposure, and really meta over-the-top set design. Frequently, it pulls you out of his films, but it's on purpose. And on the other side, you have someone like Wong Kar-wai, who would really mess around with how his footage was being filmed. For Wong, he really wanted his films to highlight and focus on the emotional impact of his work, rather than what would make the most sense from a boring linear perspective. These guys were working with actual film stock as well, nothing digital like we do. My point is, there's always been people who have wanted to mess around with the visual makeup of what a film or a video is. So, quick question. If I go into some video editing software now, chop something up, reverse some footage, make someone say sus, and then export the video, have I made a YTP? No. Because the moment a video becomes a YTP is when it gets shared with other people. As Waldfield says in his own book, Super Yoshi's main innovation wasn't making the video itself, it was realizing there was an audience of people who wanted to see stuff like it, to present them on the same websites that hosted traditional, professional content. When defining YTP, people often forget how important the first two letters in its acronym are. Eventually, people started applying special effects to these videos, trying to make them as disconcerting as possible. They'd often have loud jump scare noises to specifically target headphone users. They'd use effects that were pointless, and again, they had no story, they had no characters. These videos weren't designed to be watched. What are you, crazy? But we kept watching them anyway. While I was doing research into this topic, you might be surprised to learn there's not a lot. I found this incredibly well-written essay on Fesh Pince by Jared White. It might be the only essay ever written on Fesh Pince. White's essay analyzes Fesh Pince's place in contemporary society, and it has a section that makes a really good observation. YTPs are the most widespread form of experimental film that's ever existed. Think about it. They don't need a story, they don't even need to make sense. And if you think I'm exaggerating, consider this. A lot of them aren't widescreen. You can't get 3.7 million people to watch regular movies in 4:3 anymore, but they'll spend 20 minutes on this. Plus, this is stuff that's being produced by people entirely in their bedrooms, and sometimes millions of people end up watching them. What? Even if only 100 people watch a YTP, that's still better than most experimental films. Like, here's an example. There's a French movie from 1992 called Passage à l'acte, directed by Martin Arnold, and it's 10 seconds of the film To Kill a Mockingbird, edited to have random cuts, reversed footage, and that sort of thing. I think it's meant to make you question society or some shit. It's 11 minutes long. It's basically a YTP. Nobody has heard of it. You know what some people have heard of? The YTP that remade it using King of the Hill footage. After years of people trying to shove as many effects as possible into a tiny digital video file, a shift started happening in the videos that were being produced. They started becoming restrained. In Waldfield's autobiography, when discussing the artistic value of YTPs, he says this: mediocre death metal bands create merely a wall of noise. Great death metal bands orchestrate the rhythm and intensity of that noise so it feels like a guided experience instead of merely an onslaught. And no video demonstrates this better than Fesh Pince. A lot of the jokes Krobo makes in the video are based on the existing structure of an episode of Fresh Prince. He edits laugh tracks onto jokes where there weren't any originally. He takes background music from the show and adds it wherever he wants. It has a cold open, an intro theme song. Krobo goes as far as to put adverts into the video. For one joke, he takes the establishing shot of the house Fresh Prince is set in, which normally looks like this, and replaces it with a shot of the house from Bear in the Big Blue House. There's even fake credits thanking people 3 times. And I want to emphasize, despite how stupid everything sounds coming out of my voice, Krobo is actually a really good storyteller. Here's a clip from Fresh Prince 1.
Uncle Phil, you got to kick that man's butt. Oh, he like begging. He like, oh, Philip Banks, kick my butt.
Philip Banks, you should kick my butt.
Philip Banks, kick the man's butt.
I think you can tell this didn't happen on the show, but there's quite a lot of subtle storytelling going on here. As the camera zooms in on Uncle Phil, it tells us that he's obsessed with this stuff. Maybe he's thought about Judge Robertson before. And as Will's dialogue starts to fade out, it conveys Uncle Phil isn't listening to him, because this really cuts deep. Then he pictures Judge Robertson telling him to kick his butt, maybe implying Uncle Phil wishes he could. And then he hears his wife Vivian saying the same thing, and it echoes in his head. It's like all of this is building up to some tension, but then a second later the video just moves on. This is what modern YTPs are to me. They're fragmented storytelling. It's like a bunch of mini stories featuring the characters of Fresh Prince. You know that episode of The Simpsons, 22 short films about Springfield? It's the one Steamed Hams is from. The premise of that episode is that every minute of the show focuses on a new story and a bunch of new characters. I think YTPs and especially Fresh Prince are like that, except we see the same characters and actors every time, but that doesn't mean they have to behave the same. In one scene, Uncle Phil can be polite, in another he can be scary, and sometimes he could just do this. Man, speaking of which, Fresh Prince in general understands rhythm so well that this 20-minute video feels like it's only a couple of seconds long. The edits just flow.
Did he not feel pain when he was hurt? I mean.
Do you get what I mean? It works because it kind of moves like music. But why? Why does this work? How can something be so all over the place, defy modern editing standards, and still work? Part of this is because of a film editing concept called the Kuleshov effect. If you've ever taken a film class or hung out with someone who owns a beret, there's a really high chance you've come across it before. Essentially, the Kuleshov effect states that if you cut from one image to another, you can create meaning from that cut. Here's an example of the Kuleshov effect being used in an episode of Kitchen Nightmares. In this episode, the manager of this place, Mike, is a real dickhead, and they show a clip of him getting into a fight with one of the employees. And then immediately after that, they cut to a clip of Mike saying everyone there's a big happy family.
You get 5 times more pay than the servers. What the hell is your problem?
Kind of like one big happy family.
So what's happened here is that by putting these two clips next to each other, it's created an extra meaning. You can tell Mike's lying, but no footage ever outright says he's lying. Your brain has made that connection by seeing these two shots put next to each other. See? Your brain's really smart. And I like your eyes. It's because of the Kuleshov effect that films basically work. All editing builds off this idea. Film exploits the way our brain interprets images sequentially, but there's also a side effect of it that nobody's ever talked about, because to be honest, nobody's ever needed to. Till now. What the Kuleshov effect also means is that if you cut from one image to another image, literally between any two images, it will make sense to the viewer. The viewer might not understand why you're doing it, you might not understand why you're doing it, but the human brain will find a way to make sense of it and go along with it. It's this phenomenon that lets YTPs function. You can cut between any two things and it will still flow. And it's really useful when you're making a video essay and you don't know how to move to the next point. And in that sense, YTPs are incredibly similar to another type of storytelling, fanfiction. There's a finite amount of Fresh Prince episodes that exist in the universe. Let's not talk about Bel-Air, but there's an infinite amount of potential videos that can be made from the existing ones. Somebody that reads Metroid High School isn't doing it to get more official exploration of the Metroid universe. They're doing it because there's something wrong. They're doing it because they enjoy the stuff in Metroid and want to spend more time with it, usually in ways that official stuff never will. A lot of the time, people assume that if someone's making something like this, it's out of hatred, that they absolutely can't stand it and want to poke fun and tear it down completely. And yeah, there are some people that do that. Very Tall Bot makes fun of crazy right-wingers, and other people have gone after PragerU, But most of the time, these videos actually come from a place of love. I know it sounds crazy that people make Will Smith swear just because they really like Will Smith, but think about it. If you're unfamiliar, this is what video editing software looks like. There's so much stuff on here that if I zoom out, you literally can't read it anymore on this video. Imagine having to look at this 4 hours, constantly rewatching stuff, trying to find out what works. You will lose your mind if you don't enjoy what you're editing. When I was younger, I couldn't really afford to always be going out and watching the latest films. So you know what I did? I rewatched stuff. I've seen every episode of Fresh Prince at least 6 times, probably more. Early internet was really boring, and it taught me 2 very important lessons. 1, be rich if you can, it seems great. And 2, by spending more time with something, you learn new ways to appreciate it. In Fresh Prince, there's a running joke of Will's friend Jazz coming over and accidentally offending Uncle Phil. So then Uncle Phil throws him out of the house. But eventually I realized they only filmed that clip once, and they just replay it over and over. So anytime Jazz showed up in this outfit, I knew he was gonna get thrown out of the house. That's the type of observation you can only make by spending a lot of time with something. Or by reading Screen Rant, apparently? Okay. YTP is built off stuff like this. You eventually watch stuff so much, you start to see how it's made, and you wonder, can I change this? Sometimes jokes in YTPs work off your existing knowledge of the source material as well. For example, in regular Fresh Prince, an important part of Will and Carlton's relationship is that Will is generally more popular and charismatic than Carlton is. How's that reflected in Fresh Prince? Like this.
I figured it out, Will. I'm gonna get Dad what he always wanted.
What, a Pizza Hut in the garage?
Better. I'm gonna clinch the election by getting an influential person to endorse it.
And for another example, in the original Fresh Prince, there's an incredibly sad episode where Will's estranged father comes back into his life. Will gets emotionally invested at the thought of having a relationship with his dad, only for him to walk out of his life again, and it leads to this really touching moment.
How come you don't want me, man?
It's a really powerful scene. It always comes up in fan favorites. Here's how that exact moment is done in Fresh Prince 2. That's so good. An interesting thing about YTPs are that they are pretty much defined by the fact they're made by anonymous creators. Some people have chosen to show their face in the past, like CS188, but quite a lot of them don't. And being anonymous helps in one specific way here. You get to control exactly what people know about you. For example, it allows your work to be taken seriously when maybe it wouldn't otherwise. Who am I talking about? Children. Most people get into YTPs when they're teenagers because they have a lot of free time to make and watch this stuff. I first discovered this stuff in 2008 apparently. This is often why most of the source material that's used in stuff is like iCarly or Fresh Prince or other popular YouTube videos. They're stuff that the creator just likes or liked to watch. And you know, if we're being real, if these videos were labeled with "a kid made this," a lot of people would never have watched them because, well, a lot of what kids make is terrible. No offense, I was a kid once, if you can believe it. But anything a kid makes is also expected to be bad. You haven't been making stuff for a long time at that age. Nobody's good at anything instantly. That's where this gets interesting. According to a tweet from the creator of Fresh Prince, back in 2018, they were 24, but Fresh Prince was uploaded back in 2011. So at best, they would have to have been around 17 or 18 years old when they made Fresh Prince. For years, I thought maybe they were joking in this tweet, but then when Fresh Prince 3 came out, they put out a post confirming they were a teenager when they made the first one. To be clear, Fresh Prince was not the first video Krobo ever made, even though it looks like it is if you go to his channel. He had been making YTPs for several years, since around 2007. So this is someone who actually got better over time by making more of the stuff they were already doing. That's just good life advice. You want to get better at something? Just do more of it. I'm gonna be real right now. In the last 20 years, has any teenager had as big of an impact on wider culture as Krobo did? There's obviously people like child actors, but so much of what they do is controlled by adults. Their entire image is constructed by someone else. There's a few indie musicians who got their start when they were young, and I guess TikTok is its own thing. But here with Fresh Prince is an original, creative, 20-minute long film, I guess, completely made with zero restraint and oversight, and 3.7 million people watched it. In fact, they still watch it. This video gets comments weekly. In a time where popular films can get forgotten overnight, here's a YouTube video being watched over 12 years later. Is it fair to call it a classic yet? I seriously sat down and tried to make a list of other teenagers that had as big of an impact on wider culture, and I came up with 2 names. 1, Young Sheldon, speaks for itself, and 2, that person who would come up when I was trying to look up JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but I would only type in JoJo, so they would come up instead. And you know, thinking about it now, that was really Google that did that, so sorry JoJo. The way most people discover a YTP of something isn't usually done by searching the letters YTP. More often than not, it's because of the way recommendations work on YouTube. Someone will look up something that they were interested in, but because a YTP exists for that same thing, that then gets recommended to the viewer. And these days, YouTube's search engine is so bad that you're more likely to come across one of these while scrolling on something like TikTok, Twitter, or Instagram. This is a really unique relationship. Having a piece of art put in front of you when you didn't really have any intention to watch it. I don't think there's any other art that's had this sort of relationship with the viewer. Except... If you're not familiar with the art of graffiti, I bet you still have an opinion on it, and it's probably a political one that looks at this stuff as vandalism. But what if you step back and look at it from another perspective, one that's more sympathetic to it, and views graffiti as an outlet for creativity? Do you see where I'm going with this? All of this footage right now is playing from one of the best documentaries ever made, Style Wars. And if you're interested in graffiti, specifically the people who were trailblazing it in 80s New York, there's nothing better than this film as far as I'm concerned. Here's my tag, by the way, so you know I'm real. The more you look into Style Wars, the more similarities between graffiti and YTP start to emerge. A lot of the graffiti artists featured in the film are young. And it makes sense, because that's when everybody's the most rebellious. In case you didn't know, the most common type of graffiti is something called a tag. Think of it as the artist's signature. Most graffiti artists don't go by their actual name and pick a new one for people to call them, just like people do on the internet for usernames. If you live in a city, you have definitely seen some variant of a tag. But for a lot of these creators, it was never about vandalism, but instead about trying to get as many people as possible to witness their art, to see their name. This is also why so many graffiti artists choose to stay anonymous. They'd rather let the work speak for them instead. Well, excluding the legal threats anyway. Graffiti, just like YTP, is defined by its relationship to the audience. You'll never know for sure what someone's actual name is or what they look like, but you will remember their tag. Throughout history, humans have always wanted to leave their mark on the world around them, and that hasn't mysteriously gone away since the invention of the internet. The way someone riding the New York subway in the 1980s would have been forced to view graffiti art, as well as maybe think of it in a negative way, is the same way that somebody looking up Sonic the Hedgehog might accidentally stumble across a YTP of it. This relationship between graffiti and YTP extends as far back as even the tools graffiti artists would use. Some graffiti artists used to steal paint just so they could continue their work, the same way that most YTPers were, allegedly, pirating Sony Vegas or some other video editing software as well. There used to be so many tutorials on specifically how to do this, allegedly, but about halfway through Style Wars, the film starts to discuss why so many teens are drawn to graffiti despite the fact it's illegal. And where the movie lands on it is that these kids don't really have any other outlet for their creativity. A lot of them don't even like the fact they're doing illegal graffiti on the side of buildings, but they found a competitive community that encourages each other to express themselves in a creative way. And this is exactly what YTPs were back in the day. It's what they still are. All of these videos use the same techniques. Most of them use the same tools, but it was the creator's specific application of those tools and techniques that gave someone their own unique voice. The same way a graffiti artist would see an arrow in someone's piece and then put their own twist on it. Graffiti has always been a form of self-expression for those underrepresented and not listened to. YTPs were kind of the same thing. This stuff literally shouldn't exist on YouTube. Like, I know we say fair use and that sort of thing, but fair use doesn't actually protect this stuff. It just means if you go to court over it, you could have a case. Back in the day, loads of people had their accounts deleted over it, so there really is no precedent for it. Even Fesh Pints was taken down like 2 years ago, so YTPs have always carried this anti-authority sentiment. I've seen this really popular Tumblr post talking about how Walrus Guy, a former super influential YTPer, had a video of his taken down by Colgate toothpaste. But he went to court over it, fought the big guy, and actually won. It's a great story, but it has one tiny problem, which is none of it happened. Walrus Guy was lying, and he's the only source. There's audio of him saying it was a lie.
People thought that I was taken to court after I brought this up, and so, I just sort of went along with it. Like I said,
I just think people like to believe there is a legal case for it, but there isn't. And I'm not saying YTPs are bad, I just don't think they're protected by any law. If anything, that makes them cooler. Looking back at YTPs with hindsight, that anti-authority attitude is really what resonates the most. You think stuff should be edited like this? Well, I'm gonna do it like that. Large corporations thought kids wanted a cartoon rabbit to sell them Colgate toothpaste. So kids took that footage and edited it to make the rabbit say every swear word in existence. After reflecting on it for a while, the main conclusion I took away about YTPs is they're ugly. It's vulgar, it's edgy, it's juvenile by nature, and that's exactly why it's so good. It doesn't care what the viewer thinks about it. There is no wrong way to make one. The infinite nature of the internet makes us think that art is this thing that exists forever, and we can put it away till we're ready, and it'll always be there for us to enjoy. But that's not true. Art can die. If you stop observing it and thinking about it, it just ceases to exist. Freshpence hasn't been immortalized in a museum or anything like that. YouTube itself probably hates it. Advertisers can't run adverts on it, and in all likelihood, it's probably violating several copyright laws. You can't even swear on YouTube anymore without it openly saying it's not gonna recommend your video, which really just sucks shit. Oh, I'll just bleep it later. The only reason Freshpence has stayed relevant on the internet is because people keep talking about it. They love Freshpence and they can't stop sharing it with others. Over 12 years later, I'm still talking about it. Every time you converse about art you enjoy, when you share your memories of it with other people, you bring it back to life again. It's your unique perspective that keeps the art alive. So make whatever you want. Upload some graffiti. Make YouTube store it on their servers for free. Otherwise, who will? Yo! It's Jay from the future, and if I sound particularly happy, it's cause I don't have to edit this anymore. Shout out to my patrons for being the absolute loveliest group of people ever. Like, subscribe, Patreon, all that stuff. Also, if you made it this far into the video, if you ever decide to make a YTP of this, you have to show me. See you next time.